Dr. Agnes Forbes Saville was born on 4th December 1875 in Dundee, Scotland. Her father Robert was an architect and civil engineer. She was the first female to graduate from St. Andrews University. She married Dr. Thomas Dixon Saville. During World War I, she joined the staff of Scottish Women's Hospitals, entering France for service in May 1915. She gained many military medals. She saw patients well into her 70s and published Alexander the Great in his Times in 1955. She died 12 May 1964. Philip II of Macedon was the predecessor of Alexander the Great and Alexander's father. Alexander didn't really care for his father, but respected him for his achievements. This is a map showing the Macedonian Empire at the time of the death of Philip II. Alexander's teacher as a kid was Aristotle. The way that Alexander obtained his horse Bucephalus, who he came to love over his many campaigns, was because his father actually got him as a very nice horse and no one could ride him other than Alexander, so he could keep him. When Alexander rose to power, the Persian Achaemenid Empire was the largest the world had ever seen. At one point it held 44% of the world's population. Its king was Darius III. His ancestors invaded Greece hundreds of years earlier in the Greco-Persian Wars. The first major battle of the war was against Darius III at Issus, located in modern-day Turkey. Even though the Persians outnumbered the Macedonians, no one knows how much, maybe even 2-1, the Macedonians still won and sent the Persians in retreat. The next major action of the campaign was against a port named Tyre. It was a port, but it was actually an island that was heavily fortified and considered impenetrable. Alexander beat it by constructing a land bridge on which he mounted towers to bombard the walls. The next major battle was at Gaugamela, where Alexander fought Darius III with Darius's largest army ever assembled. Heavily outnumbered, the Macedonians still won and beat the Persians, basically destroying the empire. Darius III never ruled again. After defeating the Achaemenid Empire, Alexander moved east to the Punjab. Sogdian Rock was a citadel considered impenetrable because it was built into the side of a cliff. He made them surrender by convincing them that his men had wings and had flown to the top of the cliff in the middle of the night. The most important battle of the Punjab campaign was the Battle of Hydaspes in 326 BC. As usual, Alexander was outnumbered by King Porus, who owned vast territory in the Punjab. But Alexander still had a stunning victory that made him and Porus become allies. Alexander founded many cities throughout his campaigns, 2 of which were founded after the Battle of Hydaspes. One was named Alexandria, and the other was named Bucephalus after his horse, who died in battle. Many of his cities are still around today. Some include Alexandria. After the Battle of the Hydaspes, Alexander was very kind to King Porus of Punjab. King Porus became his vassal and worked under Alexander, and was happy to do so, as Alexander actually increased the lands he owned in the Punjab. After turning home, Alexander stopped at modern-day Samarkand, that lies in Uzbekistan, and had a lavish banquet with his friends. After a drunk quarrel with his friend and cousin, Clitus the Black, he ended up killing the man after they argued for a prolonged time. While there is no illustration of the event, one of the most important parts of Alexander's life was the mutiny at Opis. When he was addressing his army, they began to mutiny, but he gave a speech that inspired all of them to cry and apologize to him by the end of the week. On either 10 or 11 June 323 BC, Alexander died in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar II in Babylon. He was only 32 years old. He had been suffering from a fever that had been worsening for the week prior. Almost immediately after his death, war broke out between the people who wanted to be the successors of Alexander and gain his empire. In the conflict, Alexander's body was actually lost somewhere in Egypt. It was taken from a convoy on its way to Macedon. The last known record we have of Alexander's body and tomb is from Egypt, when Caligula, the Roman emperor, hundreds of years later, visited the tomb and took Alexander's breastplate, using it as his own, trying to imitate Alexander the Great. Even though Alexander lived for a very short amount of time, the empire he created was massive. It contained parts of Asia, the Middle East, India, Africa, and almost all of Greece, except for Sparta. This was the largest empire ever seen. Throughout history, historians have argued over the integrity of Alexander's character. For example, when he conquered Persepolis, one of the Persian capitals, he burned part of it to the ground on purpose. Agnes Saville defends this as revenge for the Persians' burning of the Acropolis at Athens. Alexander had many profound effects on the world. For example, he spread Hellenism in Greek culture throughout all of Middle East and India, and he founded Alexandria, which is a massive city in Egypt to this day.